Hello folks and welcome back. Today we're looking at round 4 of the Pittsburgh Regional Championships that happened this past weekend. We have Jonathan Quiñones versus Dawei for round number 4. This is where we're starting to get into crunch time, y'all. Once you get more than 2 losses, you're pretty much guaranteed to be out of day number 2, or at least your best bet is to bubble the top cut at the end of the day. So players now looking to keep up a pretty solid record here. And for Jonathan, we're going to see this team in just a second. 3, 2. Okay, never mind. The players laughing and they'll have a lot of fun. Is that a coloring book? Pokemon Peaceful Play. That looks like a coloring book. I want to get that. That's great. But yeah, Jonathan Quiñones and Dawei. Dawei has had some pretty notable successes, and we're actually seeing Dawei's team first here. Okay, Incineroar, Dragonite, Annihilate, Alolan Ninetales, Goldengo, and Archaladon. Incineroar is a Assault Vest Incineroar here with the Terra Grass. Knockoff U-Turn, Fake Out, and Flare Blitz here. That Grass still giving it an immunity to Spore and Rage Powder. Dragonite with the Terra Steel Loaded Dice. Skill Shot, Haze, Tailwind, and Protect. Annihilate with Terra Water, Citrus Berry, Defiant, Rage Fist, Close Combat, Coaching, and Final Gambit. Alolan Ninetales with Terra Ghost, Focus Sash, Snow Warning, Blizzard, Icy Wind, Encore, and Disable 2 disruptive moves this time around. Goldengo with the Terra Water, Life Orb, Good as Gold, Make It Rain, Shadow Ball, Nasty Plot, and Protect. And Archaladon here, since there's no rain, it does have that Power Herb. It is Terra Electric Stalwart with Thunderbolt, Protect, Draco Meteor, and Electro Shot. Stalwart's not an ability. Hold on. Let me do some research here. But looking at this overall, a lot of these Pokemon are very self-sufficient. Dragonite is really the only Pokemon here that is incredibly, that is really focused on helping out your teammates. The rest of them can really kind of do everything on their own. Annihilate does have Coaching, which can be effective for both Dragonite and Incineroar. Alolan Ninetales does have Encore and Disable, which can do a lot of good work to help out the rest of your team. Stalwart is a hidden ability. Hold on, what does Stalwart do? I actually don't know what this ability does. But Incineroar, especially with that Assault Vest, is going to be more offensive overall. And then Archaladon, of course, with that Power Herb, is going to be pretty strong in terms of setting up that initial, what's it called? Setting up that initial Electro Shot. Sorry for the distraction, y'all. Anyway, Stalwart allows it to avoid redirection. That's very interesting. Goldengo, Dragonite, Murkrow, Annihilate, Pursuing Arcanine, and Rillaboom is what Jonathan Quiñones has here. Goldengo is the Terra Steel Choice Specs version with Good as Gold, Make It Rain, Shadow Ball, Thunderbolt, and Trick, again, to swap that choice item to an opposing Pokemon and lock them into a move. Dragonite here with the Terra Fairy Loaded Dice, Protect, Scale Shot, Low Kick, and Extreme Speed. So a more offensive Dragonite here, but not with an offensive Terra. Murkrow is the Tailwind setter, though, with the Terra Ghost, Eviolite, Prankster, Foul Play, Tailwind, Taunt, and Haze. A relatively speedy Prankster Pokemon that can be a little bit bulky. Annihilate with the Terra Stellar, Focus Sash, Defiant, Close Combat, Final Gambit, Coaching, and Rage. It's very similar, just that Terra Stellar and Focus Sash instead. Hisuian Arcanine with Terra Water, Clear Amulet, Intimidate, Protect, Flare Blitz, Rock Slide, and Extreme Speed. This is the Intimidator of choice here, and a much more offensive version of it. Rillaboom rounds things out with the Terrifier and the Assault Vest, Grassy Surge, Grassy Glide, Woodhammer, High Horsepower, and Fake Out. Much more standard Rillaboom set. The Goldengo and the Dragonite are, pretty similar to more standard sets, but Goldengo with the Thunderbolt instead of Power Gem could be relatively relevant, and the Dragonite here with the Low Kick and Extreme Speed as offensive options. No Haze here on the Dragonite. Instead, it is on Murkrow. Murkrow kind of taking that Tailwind and Haze away from the Dragonite, giving it more options offensively, and then the Murkrow also buffing it out with the Taunt and the Foul Play. So this is a Pokemon that we saw a lot in the very, very earliest regulations of Scarlet and Violet. It was very, very strong. Honestly, I think we even saw it with Focus Sash more often than Eviolite. So I'm very interested to see how this Murkrow stacks up with those Eviolite defenses. Annihilate here as well. It does have that supportive move in Coaching. Final Gambit is a great closing move to really just guarantee a KO, but that Terra Stellar with Rage Fist and Close Combat can really do a lot of work. On the other side, matching up against this for Dawei, I think you feel relatively good about this. Again, when you have Ninetales up against a couple of flying types and a Rillaboom on the opposing team, you're gonna feel pretty good. You do have to obviously worry about the Arcanine and the Goldengo, but both your Archaladon and your Incineroar do decently well into that. The main thing with Arcanine having the Clear Amulet is you're going to have to work around that some. Your own Goldengo, though, does quite well overall. You're not going to have the speed advantage most of the time for Dawei. The Murkrow is always going to be able to get off Tailwind before your Dragonite, unless you can get some good positioning done. So that is going to have to be something that Dawei keeps an eye out for. For Jonathan, I think the name of the game is just get speed up and then hit hard. Dawei is going to have to play a little bit more of a positioning game, a little bit more of a defensive game early. And if Jonathan can just apply pressure and keep the tempo rolling, then I think he's going to be in a much better spot. Now, with the power of us not actually being live right now, we can skip forward a little bit while the players consider their team sheets. And here we go. Round number 1. Dawei C brings in the Incineroar and the Dragonite, and Jonathan Quiñones here brings in the Murkrow and the Goldengo. I think this is a good lead for both players. I think Jonathan is definitely going to want to hit that Tailwind on the Murkrow early. Foul Play is definitely a relevant move. You can get a lot of work done with that. You can potentially break multi-scale on the Dragonite, but with Incineroar having access to Fake Out, this Murkrow is still under a good bit of pressure. Fake Out from the Incineroar plus a Scale Shot into that Murkrow could be pretty big. And with Murkrow not having Covert Cloak, that was another popular item on it. This thing is likely not going to be able to move if Dawei wants to go for that. It's something Jonathan has to consider, but I think that Terra Ghost makes it pretty clean. Now, for the Goldengo here, you are choice spec, so you can get offensive really early. Unfortunately, Make It Rain, Shadow Ball don't really do a lot into the Incineroar. Honestly, this might not be a terrible place to go for Trick, but you do really want to break that multi-scale on the Dragonite early. If you can get that done, it doesn't really have any good recovery. You might be able to get a big damaging move off with something like Annihilate, or even your own Thunderbolt in the future. We do see the Terastallization from the Murkrow here going into Terra Ghost, so it's not going to get hit by a Fake Out, which is going to be pretty relevant here. But does the Incineroar go for something else? Because it's also putting a lot of pressure on the Goldengo. We don't see the Fake Out. Make It Rain come through, does break the multi-scale and get a little bit of chip damage onto the Incineroar. Special attack now at -1, but if we see a Flare Blitz come through, that's going to do a lot. And Foul Play brings the Dragonite down just into the red. Barely alive. We are seeing the Scale Shot come through. It looks like 4 will not KO the Murkrow here. 5 hits might do it. No, 5 hits will not do it. So this Murkrow is still going to stay out no matter what, not even the 5 hits coming through. That is going to boost Dragonite's speed, which is pretty notable, but that does give Murkrow the ability to go for Tailwind on the next turn. Still, Flare Blitz comes into the Goldengo, and this much more offensive Incineroar does a ton of work. Again, we don't know the stats exactly, but when Incineroar is holding the Assault Vest, you don't really invest as much into HP, or well, you might not necessarily invest as much in HP, and you really don't invest as much into the defenses. It allows your Incineroar to get some more investment in speed and offenses. So aggressive Incineroar, especially in this format, is already good. When you have the Assault Vest, it just makes it even more likely. So Dawei C getting that early KO on the Goldengo. Right now, though, has to be worried about extreme speed from Jonathan's Dragonite. Dawei does not have that extreme speed on their own Dragonite, so this thing is under a lot of pressure. Incineroar as well, at only half HP, could take a lot of damage from low kick. This Dragonite from Jonathan has a lot that it can do right now. For Dawei, playing defensively might certainly be the name of the game. You could still try to sacrifice the Dragonite, potentially swap out the Incineroar, bring in something else that is going to be pretty resistant to whatever Jonathan has, and then go for a potential Tailwind to try to get Dragonite to at least set something up, even if it goes down this turn, or at the very least let it sacrifice. And this is a great spot for this Ninetales for Dawei C. We actually see the Dragonite go for Protect here, not wanting to sacrifice itself, keeping itself on the field for a couple more turns, but Murkrow does indeed go for that Tailwind. However, something that is pretty big here, what move did Jonathan go for? It was that Scale Shot into the Alolan Ninetales. That is a tough move to press as a Dragonite when you know the opposing Pokemon has a Ninetales on the roster. Going for something like a low kick into the Incineroar slot, you do have to worry about a potential Terra Ghost, extreme speed as well. Scale Shot is a little bit more guaranteed in that regard, but Ninetales is just a clean switch into those Scale Shots. And now, with Ninetales being on the battlefield here, it is immune to Scale Shot. It is almost certainly going to be able to survive whatever combination of moves Jonathan throws at it from the Murkrow and the Dragonite, and it has the Blizzard as an option here. Annihilate does make its way onto the battlefield. It likes being up against the Ninetales a little bit more, but not all that much. And now we see Dawei swap out that Dragonite. Incineroar probably coming back in. Wolf's Incineroar, the one from, I believe it was NAIC, or the EUIC, I believe is when that distribution happened. So we get the Intimidate off again. Notably, Annihilate does get an attack boost off of that, which is pretty tough. Foul Play comes through from the Murkrow here, but not very effective into the Incineroar. But I imagine, okay, it is going to be the Icy Wind out of Dawei C here. I'm liking these moves a lot. A critical hit on the Annihilate doesn't do all that much, but we do get the speed drop here. So even in Tailwind, this Annihilate is going to be slower and slower, but that Defiant stat boost is really not going to feel great. Murkrow is going to be able to continue to apply pressure with Foul Play. It should still be relatively speedy. Ninetales is fast. I don't know if Murkrow, with the Tailwind up but a -1 to speed, will outspeed the Ninetales or not. Icy Wind would probably take it down, but you are worried about that Annihilate just getting continual boosts right now. Incineroar does have access to Knockoff, which will do a lot of damage into Annihilate, as well as get rid of that. Well, Focus Sash doesn't matter anymore. Focus Sash is broken. So we'll have to see what Dawei wants to go for here, but it makes me a little bit nervous that they are willing to just buff this Annihilate stats turn over turn. Incineroar, right now, Dawei is in a relatively safe spot where only one Pokemon is going to get hit by a ton of damage. Taunt does go into the Ninetales from the Murkrow here. I don't know if Dawei is even going to be going for those supportive moves of Encore and Disable. We do see the close combat from the Annihilate go into Incineroar. This is a great turn, I think, again, for Dawei to go for Blizzard. It would get a lot of good damage out. But Icy Wind, again, might be good to slow things down a little bit more. Maybe you're already, if you are Dawei, and seeing that Annihilate is going to do more than enough damage at this point already. So you're going to want to just keep slowing it down to allow your Dragonite in the back, or whatever Pokemon number 4 is, to potentially outspeed it now that this Murkrow has fallen. Tailwind should also be going down here in a turn or two, so that is something to keep an eye out. And now Jonathan is just going to bring that Dragonite back out, and with this Ninetales still up, things are going to get really, really tough. Again, I think Jonathan is still at a point where he's only going to be able to take 1 KO a turn, and there are 3 Pokemon left for Dawei C right now. We do see the Dragonite make its way back out onto the battlefield. Dawei not revealing Pokemon number 4 yet. I do like this. I don't think it is necessary for Dawei to reveal that 4th Pokemon yet, unless they are really put into a pinch. I think even these 2 Pokemon right now could potentially win it. Dawei cannot go for Protect on the Alolan Ninetales right now, notably. Again, though, Jonathan has to break that Focus Sash on the Ninetales before it can go down, and it could still potentially get another Blizzard off at this point with that -2 to Annihilate's speed. We do see the Extreme Speed come through. It does go into Dawei's Dragonite here, guarantees that at least one Pokemon is going to fall. However, again, Icy Wind or Blizzard here from the Alolan Ninetales is going to do plenty of damage into the Dragonite, even with that multi-scale. That should, with that multi-scale broken, that does 25% of Dragonite's health. And now, Blizzard is going to do even more work. Annihilate down to about 1/3 of its HP. Rage Fist comes through. This is probably going to take Alolan Ninetales all the way down to its Focus Sash. Indeed it does, and Pokemon number 4 is going to be making its way onto the battlefield. Now, Dragonite does have the ability to go for Extreme Speed now. Alolan Ninetales is under pressure from that, but what is Pokemon number 4? It is Archaludon. This is probably the worst Pokemon that Jonathan Quiñones could have possibly seen. The main thing for Archaludon here is that Electro Shot into Annihilate feels really, really good right now. Dragonite is incredibly pressured to take out this Ninetales. It absolutely has to take out the Ninetales on this turn. So if Archaludon does go for the Electro Shot into Annihilate, that will take out the Annihilate. And I think you have to do that if you are Dawei C. Right now, Jonathan is in a spot where you Extreme Speed into the Ninetales and you close combat into the Archaludon, and you are good to go for the rest of the game. We do see the Terastallization coming through from Dawei C right now. I do imagine that this is going to be the Terra Electric. Ooh, no, it's Terra Ghost on the Ninetales, making it immune to Extreme Speed. I was almost anticipating the Terra Electric on the Archaludon to avoid the super effective close combat damage, and Blizzard comes out. It was not going to be an Extreme Speed from Jonathan Quiñones here, probably trying to bank on a mistake from Dawei C there. But that is a double KO. Dawei C moving up to 1-0. That's a situation a lot of times you might, I might try to make the call that was a, if you are Jonathan, you are sacrificing needlessly there. But if you can get a low kick into the Archaludon and take it out from that point, then I think you have to rely on Dawei C making some sort of mistake in order to win that. Otherwise, you're just going to lose one way or another. So trying to play something a little bit more ballsy, a little bit more risky, I think that makes sense. But coming into game number 2, I think you're going to need a much better plan for dealing with that Alolan Ninetales if you are Jonathan. Let's go ahead and hop right into it. We see the Incineroar and the Dragonite making their way onto the battlefield before Dawei C here. Jonathan Quiñones bringing the Annihilate in the Dragonite this time around. Dawei C really not worried absolutely at all about bringing this Incineroar up against Annihilate here, even giving it that stat boost. Annihilate is already a very scary Pokemon. So notably for Dawei C, Scale Shot into Annihilate will do a lot of work. It breaks the Focus Sash. I don't think it KOs Annihilate from this point. Annihilate is a very, very bulky and strong Pokemon. But we'll have to see what this Incineroar is going to get up to. It is definitely going to be vulnerable to a close combat, but a potential Terastallization on the Incineroar is something that I could see. Both Jonathan and Dawei have to worry about super effective Scale Shots into their own Dragonites right now. So that's a little bit of an interesting minigame to keep an eye on. That does put pressure for both Dragonites to Terastallize, and that makes it a little less likely for Incineroar to do the same. fake out into Jonathan's Dragonite, though, could break the multi-scale, which would be relevant, and Dawei, I could imagine wanting to, or being willing to sacrifice that. Now, we do see Jonathan's Dragonite Terrasilize first here, going into that Terra Fairy, so it is immune to those Dragon-type moves, notably the Scale Shot, but Fake Out comes in anyways. Dragonite's multi-scale is broken, and it is not going to be moving this turn. Close Combat goes into the Incineroar and takes it down. Dawei sacrificing Incineroar here to try to get damage onto the Annihilate. Notably, we did not see a Terrasalization from Dawei's Dragonite, so we didn't actually see a Terrasilize first here. Dragonite does flinch anyways, and now the Scale Shot comes through. That looks like it might be enough. That critical hit as well should guarantee it. I think 5 hits would have done it no matter what. 4 hits might have been close, but with that critical hit, the Annihilate goes down cleanly. Scale Shot ignoring the Focus Sash since it hits 5 times. So a Pokemon for a Pokemon. And honestly, if you are Dawei C, I think it is much more valuable to take out that Annihilate, sacrificing your Incineroar. You don't have a -1 on your Dragonite. You have not Terrastalized yet. You do still have the option to go for Tailwind on your own Dragonite. You can Terrastalize as well, resisting those Scale Shots, and our Archaludon makes its way on to the battlefield. You don't even necessarily have to Terrastalize now. Our Archaludon provides a ton of pressure of its own. We're going to see Electro Shot probably first thing. It is going to be a 1-turn move thanks to that Power Herb. It's only going to be that single Electro Shot, I imagine, unless Dawei C really wants to get bold and call for something like Protect coming out from both Pokemon, or that Jonathan is going to make a defensive switch and give our Archaludon another turn to go for a second Electro Shot. But Electro Shot into Dragonite here, I could potentially see. We do know that Scale Shot doesn't fully take out the Murkrow in 4 hits. It could potentially take it out in 5, but I don't know if that is something that Dawei wants to go for. Again, a Terrasalization on the Dragonite plus a Tailwind is not an unreasonable move here, I think, but it does put your Archaludon potentially at risk of getting hit by a Scale Shot or a Low Kick from Jonathan's Dragonite. And we do see the Terrasalization on the Archaludon here going into that Terra Electric, Terrasalizing away from those super effective moves that Jonathan could throw at it, or at least those high damaging moves that Jonathan could throw at it. We do see the Murkrow go for Tailwind here for Jonathan Quiñones. I think this is smart. I think you need the speed advantage to be able to take this game back. Scale Shot into the Dragonite is going to do relatively little here, take it down to probably about 2/3 of its HP, it looks like, which Archaludon is absolutely fine with. And that means Dawei C is going to be able to get 2 clean attacks off with both of these incredibly powerful Dragon-type Pokemon. Which one moves first? I'm actually interested in this. It should be Dragonite that moves first, especially after that initial Scale Shot. And we see the Tailwind come through for Dawei's Dragonite. So both these Dragonites are at +1 speed. We do see the Electro Shot coming through from the Archaludon. Which one of these Dragonites moves first in the future could definitely be important. We do see that special attack boost. The Power Herb is going to get consumed from the Archaludon here. Which Pokemon this goes into could be pretty big. It does look like it's targeting the Dragonite here. I think that does make the most sense. You don't really have to worry too much about that Murkrow, and it does so much damage. That multi-scale being broken, I mean, this Archaludon is certainly max special attack. That was a ton of damage there, even without it being resisted, even without it being weakness. That was incredibly powerful. Gholdengo now makes its way onto the battlefield. Now, notably, Gholdengo does resist Dragonite's Scale Shot here, and it could potentially go for Trick into the Archaludon. That would force it to be locked into Electro Shot. However, that would only give you 1 turn to try to do damage, and you do not have Protect on this Gholdengo. So that makes things a lot more difficult. There have been some times where we have seen the choice item Gholdengos run Protect as that 4th move over something like a Thunderbolt or a Power Gem. Right now, I think that would be incredibly clutch. I could see, like, this is the exact situation where that would be relevant. However, I don't know that it is going to work out all that well. Dawei C does still have a 4th Pokemon. Archaludon is still going to be incredibly tanky. It's at a little bit over half HP, closer to 2/3, and Dragonite is still here with Haze, with Scale Shot, with Tailwind. It is going to be an incredibly difficult Pokemon for Jonathan to pin down. The Haze comes through that is going to lower Dragonite's speed, as well as eliminate Archaludon's stat changes, I believe, as well. Make It Rain comes through. This is going to do some good damage into Dragonite. I believe Dragonite is still at full HP, though. So, yeah, Make It Rain does just break the multi-scale there, but it lowers Gholdengo's special attack. And Gholdengo, I just don't think is going to have enough gas in the tank to really try to clean this up. Now, notably, we did see Murkrow's Foul Play into Dragonite do a ton of damage in the previous game, so that could certainly still be relevant coming into this one. Foul play on the Murkrow on the next turn might be able to take the Dragonite out from this spot. We saw it was incredibly close previously, but again, Dragonite gets another speed boost, which probably is going to make it outspeed both of Jonathan's Pokemon from this point. Maybe the Goldengo still outspeeds, but I don't know. Dragonite, a max speed Dragonite with a +1 could still certainly outspeed a moderately fast Goldengo, unless it's a timid Goldengo, which we could see. But the Archaludon right now is in a great spot to do a lot of good damage. Again, unless you want to try to go for Trick now with the Goldengo, which you potentially could do, then it's really not going to be, that effective. The Haze comes through. Stat change again for the Dragonite is eliminated. Goldengo can try to go for another Make It Rain here. It's going to do good damage. It does take our Archaludon down to the red, and it does take Dragonite out, even at -1. Goldengo now at -2 here. How much damage can this Archaludon do to whichever one of these Pokemon? Thunderbolt is coming through. Who are we targeting? It is just going to be the Goldengo again. How much damage does it do? Takes Goldengo down to 17 HP. Jonathan's still not out of this yet. Pokemon number 4, Dawei C, brings in the Alolan Ninetales, and that's probably the worst thing you could have seen if you are Jonathan Quiñones. Tailwind is up for both players. Everything is at equal speeds, but Ninetales is the fastest Pokemon out of these 4. Blizzard in the snow is guaranteed to hit. Murkrow takes super effective damage, and even if it doesn't do much into Goldengo, we know that it does enough. This should be it. Alolan Ninetales coming in clutch. A 1 Pokemon setup, a 1 Pokemon KO machine. Goldengo goes down, Murkrow down to 34 HP, down into the yellow. It can only do damage to one of these 2 Pokemon in any effective manner, and Archaludon still gets to move first. Thunderbolt comes through, the Murkrow goes down, and Dawei C, in 2 relatively clean games, moves on to 4-0. I really liked that gameplay from Dawei C there. I really liked what they were able to bring to the game. Jonathan just wasn't ever able to quite get that aggressive game plan going. Dawei C didn't have to swap out too many times to get into good positions and good pivots, and I think part of that was all of her Pokemon as well were very self-sustaining, self-sufficient. Same with Jonathan's. I think that is the name of the game in Regulation H, is having these Pokemon that are, for the most part, self-sufficient and self-sustaining. I think the big thing for Jonathan is that Murkrow really wasn't. Murkrow did not have kind of the all-in-one self-setup, being able to do damage on its own, being able to really take over a game individually that a lot of the other Pokemon have. So I think Dawei C bringing 4 Pokemon that really could do that, or at least, position well to provide any other Pokemon with the ability to do that, really is what closed things out for them. So tomorrow we're going to be getting into round number 5. That is where elimination is really becoming likely for players, as well as getting closer and closer to locking in day number 2. So until next time, y'all, be safe, be smart, make wise decisions, and farewell.